Hello everybody. Uh, I'm going to do is I'm just going to give it a few moments. I know it's kind of early in the morning and we're back to school. So I'm just going to give it a few moments to make sure that everybody can join us and that everybody can hear me because occasionally we do have those tech issues. So just give me a quick comment down on the comments if you can hear me. Give me a thumbs up. Let me know that I am here, that you can see me. I can see there's a couple of people who are watching. Let's see. Are we live? Are we running? I hope we are. Perfect. All right. I hope everybody is having a wonderful weekend. I've actually just got off the call with a client who's looking at a new school, so that's always fun. That's always nice to give them a bit of advice. Perfect. I've got one thumbs up, so I know someone can see me and someone can hear me. Perfect. Alrighty. Brilliant. As I said, I'll just give it another minute and then we will begin. Perfect. Ah, thanks for letting me know that you can hear me. This is great. Perfect. Yay. All right. There we are. Amazing. And I've got my second screen down here just so that I can check that there are people and that I don't just suddenly drop out in the middle of of talking because that would be really awkward. So I'm just going to continue, and what I'm going to do is I think obviously I will start in a few moments. And just for anyone who's watching this on replay, if you are watching it on replay, then please let me know. Just type the word replay into the comments so that we can see. And we will always be scanning through the comments for these lives so that any admin who wants to, or indeed anyone who can offer you help, can do so on the comments of this live. I know that there's a couple of people who are watching the comments for me today, just to make sure if any of you got any questions and you drop them down there. If they are generic, I'll try and answer them as much as I can live. If they are really, really specific, what I would say is I'll answer those just by writing, because probably everyone doesn't need to know about a really specific thing that that you've got troubles with. But I will make sure that I go back and that I answer those to you. So whether you're joining us live or whether you are watching this on the replay, and you're thinking, okay, my child is not finishing test papers on time. This is the live for you. And as I say a little bit later, you might be watching this thinking this doesn't necessarily apply to me now, but it might do in a few weeks, or it might do in a few months. So this is really why we put this together. Perfect. So I think everybody who wants to be here has had an opportunity to join us. So I will begin. And first of all, I want to say thank you to Saba, who very kindly lets me come on to the 11 Plus journey and to talk about all the things that I have seen you guys asking in the group. So this live, and I'm actually going to make the screen a little bit bigger. There we are. This live is a reflection of the questions that you have been asking within the 11 Plus journey. So do keep asking those questions, because we are watching, and we will, if we see something that's being asked a lot, then we will try and do a live on it. So I've seen a couple of comments about, oh, my child can't finish this, or they're not sure on this. We had a poll on it slightly earlier in the week, and it seemed like it was a good thing to run a live on and to really discuss. And most of these are things that I do with my students. They're not rules, they're suggestions. So just to suggest to you what it might be that that you might be wanting to do. Okay, so I'm sure everybody knows who I am, and that's just because I'm often often in the group. But in case you don't, so my name is Gemma Zoe Smith. I run the Education Hotel, and it's a tuition mentoring, assessment, and advice service. And we basically do one-to-one tuition. there is something that's going to be coming to the Education Hotel, and I am sworn to secrecy, so I'm not going to say anything much further. But we might be doing something else in a very short amount of time. But about me, I've got 9 years of experience as a private tutor, and mostly what that experience sits in is helping students to enter top UK schools, whether that is grammar school or whether that is a private independent school. So that's typically where my experience will sit. Enough about me. All right. So why are we running this talk now? Well, I thought it was useful because, as I said, people are starting to ask this question in the group, and we get this question usually around this time, as between February, half term, Easter, a lot of students, and my students in particular, will start to move to full papers or even partial papers. And it's when we start to get a feel for how long a paper is. So, up until this point, a lot of students have been working on syllabus work, and they've been working on making sure that they can answer all those tricky questions that the 11 plus throws up, and that they've really mastered those skills. But now lots of students are starting to need to practice those skills and to do so in exam papers. Now, if you're watching this and you're thinking, my child is nowhere near exam papers, everyone approaches the 11 plus differently, and you are not in the wrong. So you do what your child does best. So if you are nowhere near exam papers, or if you've been running exam papers since Christmas, it's up to you. It's your choice. The reason I popped this in here is basically because people have started asking this question in the group. If you are thinking, well, should we start papers now? I think it's useful as a student finishes the syllabus to start to test that knowledge. Now, you would have been testing it as you go along, whether that is with 10-minute tests, whether that's with workbooks, but now maybe the time to start to look at doing either a full mock exam, doing one at home, doing one elsewhere, and as we start to open up after lockdown, there are some providers that are doing in hall mock exams, to do whether it's a full paper or a part paper. And I think often part papers get overlooked in this, but they are just as useful in terms of practice and to help a child to understand and to realize how to improve. So if a child is not finishing a test paper, it can have a whole load of reasons behind it. It can show lots of different things. And four of the most common that I see, they're not the only ones, but they are the most common, is a lack of understanding. So if there is a whole big chunk of questions that are missed, and you can see that, okay, they don't know how to do the graph questions in math, or they are really struggling with inference in comprehension, then you can see that there's a lack of understanding. There's a hole there that needs to be filled. You could see something like a lack of stamina. So if your child is running out of energy halfway through, they're flagging. You can see that they've done the first half of the paper, they've put loads and loads of energy in, and then they just run out. Then you're probably a lack of stamina. A lack of focus. So if your child is the one that's looking out the window, they're getting up, they say, Mum, I need a glass of water. Mum, I need a biscuit. Mum, I need to go to the bathroom. That's showing that there's a lack of focus there. They're struggling to get through the whole paper. They're struggling to focus on it. And I wanted to put in this one, which is everyone finds taking tests stressful. The majority of my students at some point will cry or panic or just have a meltdown in the middle of a practice exam, and they won't finish it. And they'll really struggle with it. And I think that's a great lesson, because you'd rather have it happen in a practice than in the real thing. So there are also, and I used to work as a helper for the 11 plus for CCHS, and when I was working with that, there was always one child who came out of the room in tears, and they could not finish their exam paper. And what that is that it's stress. It's that they feel overwhelmed and they won't continue the paper. They won't finish it. So really do make sure that your child, if your child struggles with that, that they know how to cope. So they've got those coping techniques if they are prone to panic. So they know what to do. For my students, they know that if they start to feel that way, they're going to put their pens down, they're going to look up at the ceiling, they're going to count to 5, put their hands underneath the chair, and they're going to kind of give themselves a bit of a hug, and they're going to tell themselves they can do it. And that is one of our coping techniques. They know how to do that because they've come across that feeling before when they've been doing a test paper. So if your child is reaching this point, then these are some things to look out for. As I said, it's not everything, but it is something to look out for. We often, or at least I often, get these questions, and I've seen them in the group as well. My child can finish this style of test, but can't finish this style of test, or they're getting this percent in this test and not this percent in this test. Perfect. Because the tests are written differently. They're different stylings, they're different difficulties. They maybe test one area more than others. So for me, once a child is getting, and I deal with quite competitive schools, so I'm looking at the 90s, 95% consistently for my students. Once they're getting that percentage consistently in a publisher's test, I will move them up and I will move them on to another publisher. And Bond is really great at testing numeracy and not so great at testing multi-step word questions. So for somebody who's going for an independent, Bond is a great starting place, but it's not the place that I want them to be. So different publishers will test different things, and that's really worth considering. For the competitors or the super selective schools, I recommend, and again, it's my recommendation, but I recommend using lots of different publishers because that means they get to see it written lots of different ways. So whilst one past paper, a CGP paper, might write a question in a fairly simplistic vocab style, it might be that another publisher won't. They will write a more roundabout. Maybe they'll stick an extra number in that doesn't need to be used in the question. And I want to get my students to the point that they can see any kind of question, any question whatsoever, and they know, oh, that's fine because I've done one similar to this, or I've dealt with a question where I don't know what I'm doing. So if you are looking at those competitors, those super selectives, lots of different question publishers, lots of different styles. Look on the group on the 11 plus journey. We have lots of what's it called? Lots of different people who put down resources, who share resources, or who are stuck on a question. Those are great places to go because they give you an example of what a question style might be. So if a parent's put down a question, you think, oh, that's kind of tricky, maybe expose your child to it and let them see what it's like and have a go at answering it. Again, I like to start with smaller tests. And this is, again, it's a bit about confidence, it's a bit about stamina. As I mentioned before, often students can't sit through a whole hour's worth of math. But if we start with a smaller 10-minute test, then we move up and we do a 20-minute, and then we move up for a 30-minute, we start to be able to increase that stamina. So if they are struggling to get through the paper, or they're finding it fine to go through the CGP 10-minute tests, but they're not finding it fine when they go into a full GL mock test, then it might be a stamina thing. Here we are. And this one comes up again. It's a very often what happens is, if my child can't finish, do we just keep doing the tests? And I use the analogy of, well, if every time you drove your car, it broke down at the end of the road, are you going to keep driving it? No. Just because you're doing more tests, I do not believe that your child will get better. And what it is doing is you're denting their confidence. You're causing more stress for you every time that they're not finishing. And really, when we say to do tests, it's important to do something in between. So in between that time, you really need to be reviewing those tests. Just doing a test, throwing it out, doing another one, it's not a way to learn. And it's not the way that anyone learns. If you do something wrong at work, you will reflect on it and you will work out how to do it better next time. You won't just go, oh, I'm going to do the same thing again. So if they are struggling to do it, then make sure that you are reviewing it so that you're not just carrying on. Don't just blindly carry on because there's some reason that they are not finishing, and you need to solve that. So take some time to reflect. Don't just mark, but you should really be spending a long time going over the exam and really look to spend as long as your child took taking it in working it out. Look at their working. Did they guess? Was it an informed guess? So, for example, if they're having to times, I don't know, 11 and 121, do they do 10 times 121 and then see if all the rest of the answers were nowhere near? And that's an informed guess, and that's something that can speed up. But if you are just taking a lucky guess and going, well, it's B, then there's a reason behind that. So try and look at their working. If possible, watch your child whilst they do it. It's really hard though to do that because they do not like doing it in front of you. So often what I'll do with a student of mine is I'll actually take the test beside them. So I would say to parents, do try doing it yourself. And one thing that they learn from that is, first of all, you make mistakes just as much as they do. But also, you can then share the different ways that you do this question. And for some parents, this is a no. They will never do that because they don't feel confident in their own maths ability or their own English abilities. But it's something that I like to use with my students because I like to say to them, "Oh, I can see that you did it this way. This is the way that I did it." And we can look and we can see which one would be faster or which one would be more accurate or which one would be a great way to check. So I always present my way could be a really good way to check your way. And look and ask on the group if you're really stuck and your child's come up with an answer, but you don't know how they've come up with an answer. Ask on the group. There's loads of lovely people who will be able to help you out with an explanation of an answer. And then you will be able to help your child to understand how to answer that question effectively. At this point, when we're saying we're not finishing test papers, part of this can be because they are spending 5 steps where they only need to spend 1. So different ways to speed up, you can start learning those by putting questions on the group and seeing how people would answer them. And different people have different ways. Again, that's fine. One thing that I would recommend would be to keep the questions that your child struggled with, and whether you keep those physically or whether you take a picture of them, but then you can ask them again later and you can see, did they take on board the lesson that would have followed that reflection? Or did they just go, yes, mum, I know what I'm doing, and then they still make the same mistake? Because it's about working out, do you reflect on it and have they absorbed that knowledge? Because ultimately a practice paper isn't for a mark. The mark is pointless. The mark tells you nothing. The learning that comes from it, that's what's going to help them get a better answer next time. And here we are. I know actually someone's just put this down in the comments, but if a large amount of the test paper is missing, you need to go back to basics. So if you're looking through this paper and you're seeing they don't know fractions, they can't do time, I'm also missing some basic division, you need to go back and don't do any more practice paper because it's going to stress your child, it's going to stress you. If it's smaller areas, focus on those. I would reteach. I would run through some mini tests, so 10-minute tests. I'd look through some specific questions. If you can't see, and this can sometimes be quite hard, so I know there's been in the comments like patterns of mistakes, and sometimes if you're doing smaller tests, you're not doing full long tests, you're doing 10-minute, 20-minute test, it can be quite hard to see where to focus your time. What I do is I make a spreadsheet. I keep a log of all the different questions that they've done over time, and then I start to see the pattern emerge. And that pattern might be that most of the questions happen to be within fraction questions for math, or most of the questions, most of the problems are actually within literary devices and understanding literary devices in English. So by being able to keep track of that, then we can work out where we need to help. And that's how I would monitor. That would be my way of monitoring. So with non-verbal reasoning, verbal reasoning, you get categories of questions. So type A, type B, you look at, okay, mostly they are struggling with the alphabet codes, the codes that they've got, where they've got the big long alphabet at the top, and it goes A, B is the same as Y, Z, and then they ask the next one. They're struggling with that. Perfect way to work on it. Again, and in terms of, I can see that Sheena's written that they used to revisit old papers, work over those questions, make sure that your child really understands, especially if they're missing some of those smaller areas, they've really mastered it. And then later on in a paper, give them that question again. Make sure they haven't forgotten it. Make sure that they really tweak. For math, it's easy. You can change the numbers a little bit, and it's a bit easier to do. So, but retesting those skills. Now, one of the reasons that a student might not be finishing the paper is that they are struggling to get through it. And I thought I'd put down a couple of ways to speed papers up. And I'm just going to quickly go through them. There are many more than these, but these are just the ones that came to my mind yesterday when I was writing my slides. So, sectioning the paper. I look at students' papers, and what I usually see at this point is that they're fine in the first half, they'll struggle in the second half. And if I watch them do it, what I also find is they will spend the majority of their time in the first half. So that's the reason it's doing really well. So what I'll do is I will section the paper. Either I'll only give them half a paper and I'll see can they do both halves, or I will say to them, you've got an hour and I'm going to stop it after 30 minutes and you should be here. And I'll write big X or put a post-it exactly where they need to be halfway. I actually do it a page beyond halfway because that means you've then got time to check at the end. So that's the way that I will look at it. If they are struggling to reach that point, it means that they need to speed up their working. That's why that they're slower. I can do that for quarters. I can do that for 3/4. I can work with the student to understand when they need to be at what point. And I know that on the poll, I saw a really interesting thing. Someone wrote about lines per minute. I thought that was a really good technique as well. So knowing how much you can write in a minute and being able to know, okay, I've got 20 minutes, so I can write this amount of stuff. It's the same thing as sectioning the paper, knowing where you need to be at a halfway point, where do you need to be at the 3/4 point. And some of my students will take that through to an exam. So when the exam starts, they will find the middle question, go beyond, and then mark it off and go, okay, that's where I need to be. And it means you know when you're hitting those deadlines. So you can look at halfway into the paper, okay, take a look at the clock, I'm halfway. Really, really helps because then you know you're on track. If you're struggling with math, quick numeracy. So tips and tricks have been talked about a little bit in the group. So knowing that 11 plus 9 is the same as 10 plus 10 because you take one off the 1 and put it onto the 9. So therefore, they're going to be the same. Or that 8% of 25 is the same as 25% of 8. So speeding up your working and speeding it up by learning how to use guesstimation to check. So checking your answers by kind of doing it or doing it in a different way or undoing the working so that it means that you aren't just doing the same sums over and over again. You've got maybe an idea of what the answer could be in your head as a child, and you know what it could be, and then you're going to do the working, and if you know it comes out. So for example, one of the ones that I like to look at is if I've got 64 times 6, I know my answer has to end in a 4 because 4 6s are 24. So I can get rid of any answer that doesn't end in 4. And multiple choice, this can be really useful because I could have already gotten rid of 2 of the answers. And that's before I do the sum. So think about different ways to speed up, and there's quite a lot of tips, as I said, in 11 plus journey. If you're struggling with one specific, pop it down and we'll give you a help. With English, prefixes and suffixes. So knowing that the prefix of a word might help you to work out the word, and that works in VR as well. So you know that if it begins with by, then there's probably two of it. If it ends in, or if it's got geo in it, it probably means it's to do with the earth. And there's a load of them, but prefixes and suffixes, and I know that there'll be English tutors right now going, this one too, but there are a number of them. As I said, watch how your child does the paper and cut the unnecessary steps. The unnecessary steps are the ones that are going to be taking them time. So if they have to add 3 numbers, and what they're doing is they're adding 2 of the numbers, finding out what it equals, and then they're adding the 3rd number, that's going to take them much longer than just adding the 3 numbers. Or if they have one of these price questions, again, I'm going to use a maths example because it's where you can cut the time the easiest. But if you've got in a Best Buy, so you've got 10 for the price of £5, and you've got 5 for the price of £8 or whatever, and then your child is going to divide them down to find the price of 1, and then times them up to find the price of 30. That is, again, longer than just timesing the 10 lot by 3 and the 5 lot by 6. So again, different kind of checks. All it is just a check. It's just a quick sense check. So thinking about, how can I cut that unnecessary step? Well, I could do it the quick way, and then if I've got time, you can do it the long way. But each mark in a multiple choice is worth the same. So that's why you might as well do it quickly to try and speed yourself up. Obviously, if they're struggling to check, very different skills. But this is, if they're really struggling to finish, then those quick method checks. In English, get some summary skills. So one of the things that, in at least independent English exams, they will often ask to do, because they're not multiple choice, is they will ask, why does the character feel this way, or how is the character presented in the passage, and being able to summarize something. I do it a three sentence summary. If you can't summarize the passage in 3 sentences, then you don't have that skill. So work out how to summarize, because that can help, and that can also help to know which bit of the text to go back to. So if a child can summarize the first paragraph, the second paragraph, the third paragraph, and the question is about the second paragraph, they know that that's going to be in the second paragraph because they've summarized it in their head. They don't have to read through the first paragraph again. The same thing if there is, I'll skip to the end, which is underlining keywords in English. Let them think about what the questions could be. Some people look through the questions first, some people read the paper first, but if they can think about, oh, okay, this is a tricky word, maybe I'll be asked about it, or this is a key piece of information, I'm going to be asked a question about this later, and they can underline those, they know that these are the points they'll need to go back to. Saving time, saving yourself having to skim read, you're saving yourself having to read the whole thing. In non-verbal reasoning, elimination should be the way that you are doing a non-verbal reasoning. It's the quickest way. So there will be 1 or 2 of the answers which are just not going to happen. They're not going to fit with the rule. They can easily be eliminated. And if it's 2 of them, then you've got a 50-50 chance. And each question in a multiple choice is worth 1 mark. So a 50-50 chance is pretty good if they can't work it out. So my other tip is, if it's multiple choice and they're struggling to get through, again, if we're focusing on accuracy, it's different. But if they're struggling to get through, eliminate, guess, move on. It's 1 mark. Don't spend 5 minutes trying to work out what that is and then miss out on 5 questions at the end. And that's what we often see when there's non-verbal, because it's a quick test. So you have to be able to eliminate, try and work it out. If you can't guess it, move on. Start the question though. Make sure they get into that technique of marking the question so that they know where they need to go back to when they've got that time at the end. And as I said, underlining keywords in math or in English. So if they're asking for a increase in something, that's what you're looking for. If they're looking for by how much do the shop differ, and your child's writing down which shop is the cheapest, then they're not reading the question fully. So those types of tips are ways of speeding up individual bits. But you can't do that unless you've looked through the question and the question paper in detail. So you need to be able to really focus not on the marks, but on what it is that your child is struggling with. So if they are struggling with that, with speeding up their numeracy and math, or if they can do the paper, but they can do it in 20 minutes longer, that's when you're going to want to do that quick numeracy. If they are often spending 5 minutes on nonverbal reasoning, one question, that's when you want to be doing those nonverbals. So nonverbal elimination. So really do it in response to what your child is doing in the test should be the way that you are looking to speed up. All right. So mock tests. Mock tests are the ones that start to be talked about around this time. And mock tests can be really, really useful for students. But make it really, really clear that they know why they're taking them. Because often it can also dent confidence. If you do a mock test too early and your child can't get through the paper, and they're struggling to get through the paper at home, and you put them into a mock test and they're in that environment with other students, whether that's online, whether that's face to face, and they can't finish the paper and they don't know why they've gone to take the paper, they will take it to heart and they'll feel like they'll never finish. And if you have done it so that they can see what the environment would be like, or you've done it because they need to understand what taking a full test is, or because they're doing really well in papers and you're thinking, well, let's put them under that exam pressure, make sure they understand why they're doing those mock tests and also what is happening later on. So it might not be the only mock test that they're taking. They might be taking 3. And you want them to be able to understand what it's like to take a mock test, and then you want to improve those results. Make sure that they're not expecting, they don't think that you're expecting for them to get 90% in this mock test. If you are only wanting them to try it and you're wanting them um, to get the feel for it, or you're wanting for them, they're doing really well in all of their tests at home, and you want to see whether it's going to be the same in a environment, do make sure that why is clear to you, but also clear to your child in a way that they understand. So that they understand before they go take that test, it's not the worst thing in the world if it doesn't go right, because often they don't go right, and often that's really useful for a child because they then can see what would happen if it doesn't work. But you need to make sure that they know that that's why they're doing the mock test. So kind of labor that point, because a couple of years ago I had a student go through a lot of mock tests. I mean, like 10, 12 mock tests, and he never understood why he was doing it, and he also never he wasn't improving either. And it was that the family had decided to do it because they wanted him to be as comfortable as possible when he took the real thing. But actually what it did, because we didn't communicate as clearly as they should have with him, was he felt like every single time he came out of that test it was like the real thing. So do make sure they really, really understand. And then the last point, and the last point is really key, it is confidence. So test papers, however you take them, whether you're doing full, whether you're doing partial, whether you're doing them at home, whether you're doing them in a full mock environment, whatever is right for your family. It should be there to stretch and to challenge, but there also should be part of a reassurance. So whether that is reassuring that they know how the structure is going to be, they know what's going to happen, they know that they've done a mock test and it didn't go well, but now we know how to do our timings and we know how to calm ourselves down in an exam. Or they know that when they did the mock tests at home, they, for the last couple of ones, they did really, really well. And they know they know what to do. They know what to do if it goes wrong. They know what to do, how to recognize the different question types. They need to walk into that exam confident. And and that is one of the biggest things for my students. They need to know that you believe in them, and they also need to believe in themselves. So, whilst I would say test papers can be there to stretch and challenge, there can also be a use of reassurance. I can actually see a couple of people saying, yep, mocks absolutely bombed them, didn't work well, scores were really bad, but we used them in a different way. And that can be really useful, provided that your child knows that that's what you're doing. And if they did badly, it doesn't matter. It's a perfect trial run. It's great to do really badly in the mock exam because now you know what to do later. We know what to focus on. They're amazing for that. But make sure that their confidence is built. So as they start to do these exams, there will be points where they will climb and climb and climb. And with lots of my students, I plot graphs so that they can see that they started out and then they increased and increased and increased, and then they'll often plateau. And that plateau is ideal for me because it's when they start to plateau that you can see, okay, they've got used to the exam style. Are they speed it up usually? So they're now finishing. They're looking at their mistakes. Maybe they haven't had a chance to check. Maybe they're not checking. But that's the thing that you can work on. So it's great to to stretch them. It's great to challenge. It's great to change between different publishers. That's often what I'll do when they're plateauing. Or if sometimes they get a bit overconfident, I think they can do it. And I'm going, well, try this test paper. And often with that student, they'll go, okay, I know now. I know that I've got to work on this, or I've got to work on this. This is perfectly fine to rerun a paper, or to take questions from previous papers and put them together. It's absolutely fine to start with to start using easier papers in between tricky papers. It's a great way to boost confidence. And once their confidence is boosted, they know that they can do it. So to be able to reassure them. And so you're balancing both that stretch and challenge, but you're also reassuring them that they can do it. So it's been a fairly quick live this morning, but I thought it would be something that would be useful as parents start to come up to Easter and we start to think about doing those full tests, mock tests, and as we start to move into what it is that you're going to do is that kind of stretch of preparation. Just to reiterate, it's your choice. So if you don't want to do a mock test until a month before, that's your choice. You know your child. And if you think, I want to run a mock test now, but actually what I'm doing is I'm trying to see where the strengths and weaknesses are, and then I'm going to work on it, brilliant. If you have discovered that your child is missing a certain area, brilliant, you found it out now and you can work on it. You've got that time to do so. If you want to give your child an easier paper, and this is often something I do really near the exams, is I'll give them papers they've done before. I can show them, look, how far you've come. I'll often bring out the previous one as well and say, this is what you did first. And they've often forgotten it by that point. So it can be a really great way to show them how far they've come, to improve that confidence. But do make sure you're always reviewing those papers. So if you're needing to speed up, your child is not getting through the paper, There will be a reason. That reason might be that they're not quick enough in doing the question individually. Might be that they are uncertain about certain aspects. It might be that they are underconfident, but you can work now on it. And by doing it and by finding these things out, and don't worry if you're not hitting 85% in every exam paper, because no one will be. No one will be at this point. And you are working on what your child needs at this point. They've run through the syllabus. If they haven't finished the syllabus, perfect. Keep going with that. But if they've gone through the syllabus, they've done the exams, you can see where to work. You can see what to look at. Your child is different to the child that sits next to them in the exam. They would have prepared differently. They would have had different preparation. They would have done different things. They would have focused on different things. But it's about tailoring this experience. And that's where test papers can really come in handy, because they can help you to focus. They can help you to focus on the exact area that your child needs support with. And they can help your child become confident. They can help them realize what to do if they get anxious during the middle of a test. They can help them to focus and to realize how long it takes to do a test. It's a stamina thing. They can also help to expose them to loads of different styles of question, so that when they see something new in an exam, they can go, okay, that's okay, I can do it. I can do it because I've seen it before. So if your child is currently struggling to speed up, hopefully this live has helped. And hopefully you've gotten a couple of tips. But the biggest thing I want you to take away is that you're not alone. There are plenty of people whose children are not finishing the test papers on time. There are some who are finishing them much quicker than they should do. But it's that review that's really going to help. That review is going to help move you forwards. So once again, thank you so much to Saba, who has let me talk basically for the last 40 minutes. And if you have questions, if you have problems that you're coming up with in question papers, or you really just want to know how a tutor or another parent or another child would do this this question that you've got, pop it on the group. That's what the 11 Plus journey is here for. We will always try and answer your questions. I will try and answer them whether you're watching them on replay, whether you're watching them wherever. And yeah, thank you very much for tuning in. All right, bye bye.